Every person has a story, but not everyone has a place to tell it. I've interviewed amazing people all over the planet. I want you to meet them.
My name's Jerrica Ford, and I am the most interesting person you've never heard of because I just moved into my very own house after being a heroin addict for many years and going through recovery and starting my life all over.
Jerrica Ford, welcome to the most interesting person you've never heard of podcast. A lot of people have not heard of you. I'm lucky to have heard of you, and immediately when I saw you, I think a couple of weeks ago, I'm like, oh my God, you've got to be on this podcast because I love stories of transformation, and you're one of them. I mean, you really are. So I met you, man, I want to say 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. Was it 3 years ago?
Yeah.
So 3 years ago, what I love about the work that we do is I get to tell all kinds of stories that lately, especially the last several years of my career, deal with big things like homelessness, like addiction, like, food insecurity at a big level. We do work for Second Harvest and Catholic Charities and kind of tell stories for all kinds of different organizations that deal with that stuff, right? And throughout all of it is sort of this assault, I think, on families and in the unstableness of families as they deal, right, with trying to make it through life. Housing is a big part of a project that we're working on right now, because it's all connected. I think all of it's connected.
Oh, it definitely is.
So tell me your story. So I met you through a project we were doing for Catholic Charities that we were just talking about. Yeah. Every year they have an amazing gala that kind of tells the story of what they've been working on that year and the impacts that they're making on the community and all that stuff.
Well, we actually met for the commercial for the Christmas the year before that.
That's right. We did. So you were at Rising Strong.
Yes.
So I'm going to do my best to explain that program, and then you can tell me I'm wrong and do this right. And then after that, you can tell me your story. But I met you because we were filming a project, right, for the Christmas collection.
Yep.
For Catholic Charities, and one of the stories was the story of your family. You and your husband Jeff and your kids were at the Rising Strong program here in Spokane, kind of over by Spokane Falls. There's a campus there, and you were embedded essentially in living in this world. And it's 4 families that mostly come out of addiction.
Yep.
That had been separated or were threatened to be separated from their kids, and they are sort of integrated back slowly together as a family rather than separated apart. Am I getting this right?
Yes.
Okay. So tell me in your mind what Rising Strong is, and then how did you come to that program? Where were you 5 years ago? Because I will tell you that the person I met 3 years ago is not this person right now.
So when I met you, we had been there for probably about a year. We did a total of 18 months at Rising Strong, and it was kind of crazy. So me and my husband were in addiction. We were homeless. We had actually been homeless and struggling for many years, way before addiction ever hit. We were just always struggling, it seemed like.
What years are we talking about?
So me and my husband had been together for 16 years, but we had been struggling for homelessness probably for almost 10 years ago now. So about 2013, 2014, we started this process. We didn't become addicts, I guess you will, for another 6 years. I mean, we were thankfully only short-lived in our addiction. Pretty much when we got in it in about 2 years, I was already ready to be out of it. I was so done with that lifestyle.
2 years.
That's a long time.
It's a long time.
And it was hard. So we spent most of those 2 years actually apart. Jeff was living in Moses Lake. I was here in Spokane. I was living with my mom, and we never had a stable place. So
and the kids were where?
They were with me. They were always with me.
And how old are your kids at the time?
So at the time, I had 2 kids at the time. I had Lily Lynn, Lucas. He's transgender, so he goes by Lucas now.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So when all this started, so he was about 12 when it started, which would mean Piper was about 2. And then we struggled for a couple years.
Apart.
Yes, they're 10 years apart.
Yeah.
And then right about the end of my addiction, I was just ready to be done with it and found out I was pregnant.
Wow.
And I had no idea what to do.
And Jeff wasn't there.
He was, well, he had just came back to Spokane, like just came back.
Okay.
So we were still using at that time. He had just moved back maybe 2 months before that. We had earned all this money. I was building a shed for a friend of mine, and I had earned $600 to move him back here and pay for 2 months rent for him to stay where I was staying. So he comes back, I find out I'm pregnant, and I don't want to be using, but I also knew like it was irresponsible what we did. I mean, honestly, it was. We were homeless, we were addicts, we had 2 children we were struggling with. I knew it was an irresponsible thing to have done. At that point, I didn't even think I could have kids again. Like, it'd been years, so I didn't think much of it. Plus, we were addicts. We were probably being irresponsible anyway. So I actually checked myself in. I was at, I started the methadone program. I checked myself into Deaconess Hospital, and I just told them the truth. Like, I'm an addict. I just got on a treatment program. It's not working, and I don't want to use anymore. So they checked me into the hospital for 3 days, balanced out my dose, and I never used again. Not once. It was the biggest life.
How'd you do it?
It was.
Do you think?
Well, they let me stay there until my dose got raised up enough to where I was no longer withdrawing. And then once I finally hit that where I could go 24 hours and get my next dose the next day, I wasn't sick. I was finally feeling okay.
Every person has a story,
almost 4 years
but
ago,
not
I've never
everyone has a
used
place
again.
to tell it.
And
I've
so
interviewed
then
amazing
I
people
had my
all over the
baby,
planet.
a few months later,
I want you to meet
and
them.
I was honest with them when I went in there. I told them I had been in addiction. I didn't have much prenatal care. I went to, Planned Parenthood a few times. I didn't know what I was going to be doing. I was so scared.
Yeah.
At this point, I had not told my mother, who I was living with, that I was pregnant. Nobody knew. I wake her up at 5 a.m. and tell her, Mom, I don't feel good. I got to go. And I need you to watch Piper for me. Lucas was visiting one of his friends. They had no idea I was leaving to a hospital to go deliver a baby. So I'm freaking out. Unfortunately, my children have all been premature, so I knew that this baby was early, and I probably didn't help that the first part of my pregnancy I was an addict, obviously.
Yeah.
So
In terms of the premature part of that. Yeah.
So and that's a sign of it too. So he was born great though. He did have to stay in the NICU for about 20 days just because they wanted to get him as close to the due date. He had no withdrawals. He was healthy. He was great. Good. So I was honest with them, and they of course contacted social services and let them know. And then I had done all the requirements that they needed to do. So the last requirement
Are you and Jeff back together at this point?
Yeah, we had been back together. We were separated once when Piper was firstborn. So we had been together at this point now for many years.
He had been in Moses Lake or something, and
then
now he's back, and you guys are together, and then you get pregnant. And,
so and we're living 2 separate houses, but...
Oh, you were?
Yeah, so he was living he was still using at this point.
Okay.
I was getting clean, and so
You're
we have this
not
baby.
Around me, man.
Yeah, so we have this baby. It's in the NICU. I'm clean. I'm just locked in my little room at my mom's house. At this point, my mother is an addict too. So I'm living in a house of addicts. I'm locked in my little room with my Piper at this time, and she's she was 5, I'm sorry. So she's 5, and I'm just doing her schooling. She just started kindergarten, and so CPS is like, we're going to leave you alone. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And then they were like, well, where do you live? And I was like, these are who I live with. And they ran a background on my parents, on my stepdad and my mom. And they were like, listen, we just can't have you live here, and you have nowhere to live. So I talked to the lady, and
So they stepped in.
Yeah.
CPS stepped in.
So it was going to be kind of this catch-22. If they didn't step in, we wouldn't have gone to Rising Strong. You had to have a CPS case to go to Rising Strong. So I didn't want to be displaced for my children, of course. So I was trying to do all these steps prior to them stepping in. I was trying to get housing and do all these things. There was no resources. I had went down to the housing department every day for 7 days in a row, 7 business days, did everything, could not get ahead for anything. And I'd done every resource you could possibly find. So I was like, all right. They said, we're going to step in. We're going to
take your kids.
Yeah, we're going to take your kids. So what they did is they let my kids stay at the house that I was being kicked out. I had to leave, even though I was the only one in that house at capacity UA. I left the house. They left my kids there. I know. So they left my kids in this house. I left. I stayed one night where Jeff was at and was like, I don't want to stay here because Jeff was living at a trap house. Yeah. And I was like, I don't want to stay here because I'm clean. They just got involved. Like, the last thing I want is to be in a house where you get raided or something.
Right. So you're with your child. CPS comes in. They say you need to leave. Mm-hmm. We're going to let your child be here with your parents who are using.
Yep.
And you have to leave to go to a trap house to stay with Jeff.
So thankfully my aunt stepped in and got a hotel for me, so I didn't have to stay there.
Sense at all.
Yeah, so this happened on a Monday.
Because they needed to separate you from your child.
Yes, the job, they had to displace me from my children, even though I was like, I gave clean UAs. I'd been giving clean UAs at this point for weeks.
But this is just a step in the process.
It was a step in the process.
It's like they knew the long term this was probably the right thing, but you had to deal with it for a day or two.
So we do this on a Monday.
Unbelievable.
On Tuesday, we do the court appointment on Zoom. Okay. And they were like, we're going to refer her to Rising Strong.
What year is this now? This is 2020.
2020. So this
was right when COVID was going.
Yeah. So Killian's born September 7th.
Okay. 2020.
2020. All this happens
in the middle of COVID.
Right in the middle of COVID.
Raging middle.
They wouldn't even let Jeff on the ambulance with me. He wasn't even there when he was born because they wouldn't let him in the hospital. Nobody could visit the hospital. Nobody knew anyway. But we had to do like every 3 hours we could go up to the NICU and I could see him and feed him and hold him and all this. So we did this for days on end, and then CPS gets involved. So they're like, we're going to leave your 2 kids with your mom. They pulled my son. He was visiting his biological dad. They pulled him away from there. They made him go to my mom's, where they knew there were people using in that house, made my 5-year-old daughter and my 15-year-old son go to this house and stay there. I go to that trap house and I tell him I have nowhere to go. What am I supposed to do? And I'm literally wandering the streets like, I don't know anybody. I'm clean at this point. So I have no connection. I don't know what to do. So I go to this trap house.
Unbelievable. Because it's the only person you know.
It's the only person I know. So we do this appointment the next day. I get a hold of my aunt. And she's like, I'll pay for a hotel room. I don't want anybody else there with you. She knew Jeff had still been using. So I'm like, fine, that's great. I just need it for a few days until I get to Rising Strong. So we do this. They say they're going to refer us to Rising Strong. We do the appointment on Tuesday.
Did you know you were going to Rising Strong?
Oh, that was my goal. Okay. That was my goal.
So the option was what? Rising Strong or what?
Or fight this whole thing, try to get housing from scratch and a job. And all this time, my kids may have been in foster care and all these things. My whole goal was Rising Strong.
And so Rising Strong basically is saying, we're going to let you go to this program, but this program means that you will be separated from your kids as part of it a bit, right?
Kinda. So you only have to have CPS involvement to get to Rising Strong. You have to have an open CPS case because the only way to get in is a referral from the CPS worker.
Very few people know about Rising Strong, especially in 2020.
Yes.
New program.
It was brand new.
Pilot
program.
So
I had heard about it in the hospital because I told them I'm homeless, I'm a recovering addict. What do I do? They said there's this Rising Strong program, but you have to have a CPS case. So I'm like,
how do I get a CPS case?
Yeah, so I'm all for this, but I'm like, you made me, and I'd never been displaced from my kids. During this whole time of addiction, during homelessness, my kids were taken care of. Like, they always had a roof, they always had food. Yeah. We did every school activity. So I'm heartbroken at this point. I'm 3 days away from my children.
We're going to let you go through this program, but we have to take you away from your kids.
So we're 3 days away from the kids at this point. I do the preliminary intake. They accept me. I do the mandatory intake. They accept me.
You must have been scared to death. Oh, gosh.
Because one person's like, I don't think they'll fit. Then that's it.
Then what do you do?
And you have to meet with like a preliminary, a regular intake, and then you have to do a full intake.
And then you're permanently separated from your kids.
Yeah,
and
exactly. So
this is a big leap of faith you're taking here.
And at this point, in my mind, Jeff's still using.
Yep.
So he still has to do all these steps too.
Your mom and stepdad are using.
And they have the kids.
No one else in your life.
So my aunt on my mom's side does at this point, the second day into it, she takes Piper. She's a U.S. Marshal. So we're not very close.
The irony of that.
Yeah. So we're not very close. The bonus of this is she already had a federal background check. So she takes Piper. Okay. She has Piper for 3 days.
She qualifies.
Right off the bat. I get to Rising Strong 4 days later. My kid, I'm calling the day before that. I'm accepted. How long do I have to wait till I get my kids back? And they said, your kids can come the day you come. I'm calling everywhere, calling the CPS. I'm accepted. I'm going to be there at Friday at 9 a.m. I want my kids there at 9:15. Right. And sure enough, my son was released from the hospital the day we get to Rising Strong.
Miracle.
And and then my daughter comes. My oldest decides to stay with his dad for a couple weeks. He stays there. That's a whole crazy other story. That falls through. He goes back to prison. Lucas comes and stays with us. We do Rising Strong for 18 months.
So Jeff went back to prison.
No,
not Jeff.
No, my oldest son's father is not in his life.
I gotcha. Okay.
Jeff has raised Lucas since he was 1.
Okay, yeah. Lucas's biological father.
Yes. So Lucas tried to stay with him while me, Jeff, and the 2 littles are at Rising Strong. So we do that. The best thing about that is they do a blackout date when you're there. So 2 weeks, no programming, no visitors, no nothing. That means my baby just got there from the NICU. I had been away from my youngest for 4 days, and I had never been away from her. And I just got 2 weeks of just
Hang out with your kids.
Just hang out with my kids. I didn't
Smart.
have to do nothing.
Smart.
It was the best
You
thing.
just go eat and you watch TV and just do not. It's like a little vacation, sort of.
And this time, I had wanted to be
Smart.
clean for so long before that I was ready to accept anything. I wanted every resource you had. I wanted to fight with, I wanted to go in there guns blazing, doing everything I could to do the right thing.
You were completely 100% focused on this.
I was all for it. Jeff, on the other hand, he was all for the family wanting to get clean. He was unsure about the program. He didn't know,
So was he there then? Did he go in the same day?
Yeah.
So he went in the same day.
Yeah, we did our intake appointments. The first one together. The second one we had to do separate. We were both accepted.
And that's the idea of the program.
Yes.
Right? Because typically dads go away.
Yeah.
And honestly get
We
separated
were
from
very
their
rare.
kids. And that's one of the reasons that Rising Strong
Yeah.
is created, because we have generations of kids who have been separated from their fathers.
Yeah.
Right?
And most of them, there was very few couples in there until after we graduated.
Interesting. Because the dads typically are like, well, you don't get to see your kids anymore, so off you go.
Yep.
And then it leaves crazy holes in kids' lives
Yeah.
who grow up to be adults with problems and all kinds of stuff because they've been separated. So Rising Strong's intent
Is to keep
is
all families
all
together.
the family together, but not really until you get clean. So Jeff could he see his kids?
Yeah. So he was
so
already.
how did that work?
So we get there.
He's still using.
He was still using, and then we get accepted. We get there on the first day that we're going to be there. He had been accepted to an outpatient treatment to take Suboxone.
Okay.
He had. So those are mandatory requirements. You can't go in there withdrawing
What's
sick.
Suboxone? It's like a
Suboxone is it's like a Noxolone medicine, so it's an opiate blocker.
okay.
So you can't take Suboxone and still use heroin. We never did fentanyl or anything. We were heroin addicts.
I was going to ask you, what was the drug and how did you get to that? Did you grow into heroin? Did you start at the beginning?
Kinda. So we to start it, Jeff had back surgery and got a lot of pain pills, and then
Opioids.
my dad was a heroin addict. He died. He actually got clean, got on the methadone program, and then died pretty much right after that when I was 23. And then we were very close. He was the most amazing man in the entire world. He was an addict a very short time of my life, and it basically just ate away his body.
Wow.
And my mom had been an
Here in
addict.
Spokane?
Yeah.
So you were born and raised here?
Oh yeah, I've been here my whole life. I went to
Where'd you
Rogers
go to high school? Rogers, okay.
Rogers High School.
That's the question in Spokane,
Yeah.
right? What high school did you go to? Yeah.
Went to Rogers High School.
Okay.
I was a Hilliard kid. I went to
Yep.
Bemis, Shaw, and Rogers.
Okay, my dad went to Bemis in 1920 whatever. Swear to God, he went to. That's so funny. It's
Yeah.
a small town. Wow. Okay, so you're there. Jeff's in,
Yep, and he starts his Suboxone.
and this had been how many years of heroin to get to that point? Like
about 2.5.
2.5 years.
Yeah.
And you just tried it and couldn't stop.
No,
How did it work?
So I did it, and then I didn't really like it, and then I didn't do it for a long time, and then me and Jeff got back together, and right after Piper was born, so I want to say she's 6 months old, a few months of that go by, so we're getting closer to her being 1 year at this point, and then I'd done it again, and then I got hooked on it, because at that point, it was free to me. It was just there, and I was getting a lot of it, and I could have however much I wanted for nothing.
Wow.
So I ended up getting addicted at that point to it. We moved a lot at this point. So we moved from Spokane to Moses Lake. I went cold turkey, got clean quite a few months, then started using again. Then I got on Suboxone, got clean, started using again. And it was just bouncing back and forth, because we would go through these phases where it was cheaper to get enough food to feed the kids, and then we're starving, but we could have free drugs that make you not hungry. And so at that point, it was like, all right, screw this. I'm just going to use, so I'm not having hunger pains.
So looking back, what do you think makes that happen? Is it just
I think
desperation, sadness? I don't have anything else.
It's a struggle. We struggled for so many things for so long, way before we were addicts.
Economically struggling.
So he has 2 other kids from a previous marriage. At one point, he was working for this. I mean, it's a wonderful company. He was doing tree removal, sod, all this stuff. He was grossing $1,400 every 2 weeks. He was getting $260. We were living off of $260 every 2 weeks for me, him, and Piper and Lucas. And we were bouncing around hotels. It was impossible. And I could not pay for a sitter to get to me for working. I could only do Craigslist job stuff. We did that for years. Wow. We were struggling. And the worst part was
And there's no safety net. There's nobody
nothing.
to help you.
No.
No, the families can't do what they used to do.
And it's just, we were struggling. And granted, looking back, there were resources, like Jeff's family was there for us. It would have been
even worse. Could have been worse.
No, it would have been in a reality we probably weren't ready to accept. They would have been like, hey, you're going to give us the kids until you get clean. And we're going to take, and they would have taken amazing care of them. In my mind, we were doing what we everything we needed to.
Right.
Even before we were
get
using.
My kids out.
Yeah. So even before we were using, we were like, I never missed a school event. Our kids were cared for.
Nobody knew.
Yeah.
You hid it. This was a hidden to the outside world. And is that part of it? Just what did it feel like to live in that? Yeah.
It's sad. You didn't want anybody to know. It's awful. I mean, I guess now I'm proud of how much I came out of it and where I've came from and the fact that I can use that to help other people.
Right.
But in that first few, I hated it. I hated admitting that my clean date was during my pregnancy. I hated, telling people that. They're like, my clean date is so close to my son's due date. I mean, my 4 years is just before my son's 4th birthday.
Wow.
That's embarrassing.
So have you forgiven yourself?
No.
You're working on it.
I'm trying, yeah.
Maybe this is part of that. Right?
Yeah.
So you go into Rising Strong, you get this chance, Jeff's there. How's it work?
So we go in.
You must be just like, where
it was that awe, really, because I'd never heard of this place until we were at that hospital. So we get in, like I said, we're blacked out for 2 weeks. All I know is that we're going to have communal living. We have it's 2 heartbeats per room. We had me, Jeff, Killian, Piper.
2 heartbeats
That's
per
what
room.
they call it, 2 heartbeats per room.
So who was in your room?
So we had me, Jeff, Killian, and Piper. We all shared a king-size bed. Piper had her own room. So we technically had 2 rooms for us 4, and then my son came and lived with us just after that. So we ended up getting 3 rooms. Lucas had his own room. Piper had her own room. She still co-slept with us. She was just, used to it. Yeah.
That's every
So
kid.
5 years old,
Baby,
1 years old. He was in his little bassinet next to us. She just co-slept. They do all these amazing classes. We took Circle of Security, which I love. That's a parenting class.
That?
So it's this parenting class where it teaches you how to it's like the circle of a kid's behavior. So you let a kid go out, fill their, it's basically they're emptying their cup. They're, releasing all this energy and this emotion and all these things, but you're always there to catch them. So then they come back at the top of the circle and you're there to fill their cup, their emotional need, their physical need, whatever it is. So it teaches you the circle.
This is how the reaction's going to be.
Yeah.
Just be patient with it.
So we do that class. We do DBT, which is dialectical behavior therapy. There was 4 mods of that. We did financial resource classes. We did, they had classes and we were there for it. I loved everything. Oh yeah. I was there for everything you had to offer. You have yoga, we were there. Jeff was doing it.
Why?
Because we wanted to utilize everything. That was said in our minds.
You knew this was a new chance.
Yeah. This was such an amazing program. And it would baffle me because there's these people that would come in. You would see 2 types of people. The ones that only came because they're like, well, I'm going to lose my kids if I'm not here, but I'm not ready to be clean. And then the ones that were like us, that were like, we want this.
Let's go.
We don't want to use again. And it's amazing. They offered so many classes. Jeff started college when we were there.
Wow.
And he is now a college graduate. He's a substance use disorder professional. He now does, so when I was telling you we do the intakes, the preliminary and the regular intake, he now does the intakes for Rising Strong.
No way. Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah, he works for Catholic Charities too. So we've literally come full circle.
And there's a reason for that because he knows.
Yeah.
He knows people aren't going to get away with shit you guys have seen it all.
I've seen it all.
So that's one of the reasons Catholic Charities hires people who've gone through the program because
they've
seen it all.
I found out that, and I don't know how true this is, but I've heard that I was the first person that Catholic Charities ever hired who was a graduate of a program like that.
I bet.
Whether it was St. Margaret's or Rising Strong or anything. I was the first person they ever hired. No, that's what I've heard from a few people that had been here a lot longer than I have.
At least Rising Strong, you were the first.
I was the first. And now they've hired quite a few.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's cool. You're a pioneer with the arrows in your back, right? Well, so Rising Strong, the way I understand it, I've heard this was a pilot program that had started somewhere else, another place in the country. I don't know where, Cleveland or somewhere, but Buffalo somewhere, and it had been effective. And so Catholic Charities decided we're going to adopt this because we believe in keeping the family together, which is sort of the whole point of it. And it's just continued to grow, right? And and so it's still doing well and still.
Yeah, we actually just recently met with another Catholic Charities member and wrote a letter to the legislature just to explain what a benefit this programming was to people like us.
Wow.
And so it was great. Not only do you get to start your life over, like Jeff never knew he wanted to work as a substance use disorder counselor.
Right.
I didn't know I wanted to be a property manager. Like, we didn't know. We just were ready to start over. And they give you all this, opportunity to do it. And you get to leave there with housing.
Right.
You sit there and you meet with housing specialists. So we left.
when I interviewed you for their Christmas collection, it was, hey, you guys were a year in, and you were still a little. You had these this look in your eye, all of you, like, this has been hell. This has been hard. Like you were tired.
Yeah,
and
it's communal living. That part's hard too.
And unsure, right? You were definitely had your stuff together.
Yeah.
But you were about to go to a place they had told you called Gonzaga Family Haven, which didn't even exist yet.
No, and that was the craziest part. So at this point, they told us all about this wonderful new apartment complex that was just being built, Gonzaga Family Haven. They're going to have wraparound services. They were going to have case managers, a daycare, a splash pad. It's going to be all housing for people that were like us and that, were ready to change their lives and all these things. They were like, we're going to have you move in August. August comes around. Well, it's going to be November. And November comes around. And
it's a brand new
January.
This is a new thing. Right?
Yeah. So we moved in finally in February of 2021, February 16th. We move into Gonzaga Family Haven.
So were you skeptical about whether this was real?
Oh, no.
You knew what happened.
We went to the groundbreaking ceremony.
Oh, that's right. And we filmed that. We were there.
Jonathan Mallahan asked,
Amazing
who's
guy.
the CFO of the housing, had asked Rising Strong for somebody.
Jonathan used to work for the city.
Yeah.
And dealt with housing in the city.
So he had asked Cedric Bradley, who was the director at the time, for a family to come and speak, who would, that they would utilize this type of resource in a great way. Cedric came and found Jeff, who had just started. They wanted somebody, especially who was in college, because the Spokane Community Colleges was going to be there.
Cool.
So they had Jeff come speak. That was the first time I'd ever met Jonathan Mallahan. So we go and I met him and Susan Foster Dow.
Who was amazing. I went to high school with Susan.
Really?
Yeah, at Gonzaga Prep. We both did right there.
That's amazing.
It's so full circle.
It is. And it was great. So I meet them there. We do this thing and I end up meeting Senator Maria Cantwell, and there's all these pictures of me. She's going through my phone, looking at pictures of my kids.
She's super cool.
We're telling her our story, all this stuff, which I don't know if you know this, but a while later, I ended up doing a press conference with her at Gonzaga Family Haven.
No way.
After it was built.
So for people who don't know, Gonzaga Family Haven is this sort of brainchild, also a pilot program, never really been done anywhere in the country, as I understand it.
Yeah.
And it's right adjacent to Gonzaga Prep. So it's right on Hamilton and
Foothills Drive.
Foothills Drive. It's that new apartment complex there. And when it went in, people were like, oh, this isn't going to be good. This is just like one of those havens that's downtown, which you now work at, and we're getting to that. But it was, there was concern for the neighbors, big time. And I've been meaning to get Peg Con McEwen on this podcast because she's incredible.
She is the best.
And she taught my kids at Prep and was the dean of students there
for 33 years,
forever.
Yeah,
and then took this gig to take over this brand new facility. So essentially, Gonzaga University, Gonzaga Prep, St. Al's School and Parish, St. Al's Parish at least in school, all kind of partnered together to build this low-income housing that was essentially paid for by tax dollars, not by any private funding or didn't come out of Catholic Charities funds at all.
Nope.
It was all kind of federal money for affordable housing, and they added stuff to it. So it was there's a connection to G-Prep and to Gonzaga University because there are students there who go to both of those institutions and the parish of St. Al's who contribute to the place, right? Can you tell me about that? How does that work?
So there are actually families that live there who, if they have high school students, they can qualify for a full ride scholarship to go to Gonzaga Prep.
Wow.
And that's paid for by donations because they live at Gonzaga Family Haven. Peggy has worked very hard to make all these amazing partnerships, and it's a very unique perspective. There is no other place in the country that does this, where they partner with universities and high schools and things. I mean, she has the Gonzaga University Athletics Department there. I mean, half of the week. All last year, they were there for 2 or 3 days out of
players
every
are
week.
coming in and talking to the kids that live there.
They're doing mentoring programs 2 to 3 days a week, every day after school. And then the other opposite days, they have teachers that either work at Gonzaga Prep or who went to school at Gonzaga University come in and do mentoring and teaching there. And they do tutoring for kids after school.
And the students from G-Prep come over all the time as part of their community service stuff and work with kids after school.
So their community service hours are done there, and they do mentoring, they do cleanup, they just spend time with them.
They move people in.
Oh, they moved a lot of furniture for us. Holy cow.
Well,
when I was there, there was a lot of furniture.
As a Catholic kid, that's really all I really know how to do. As somebody who grew up as a Catholic boy, all you end up doing is setting up tables and chairs and moving crap. But anyway, it's
they
still
moved
going
a lot
on.
Of
I'm glad I'm not the only one.
St. Al's donated enough furniture to basically furnish
their parishioners
the basic needs of every first person who moved into that housing complex. There's 74 units.
Wow.
And they all came with the basic essentials, beds. I mean, a lot of it came from other donors and stuff, but St. Al's really provided a lot of that furniture. GU provided a ton. And Peggy is just this amazing person who thinks of these things, and she gets all these, just events that you would never think of. I mean, she has a Santa Day every year where all the kids there can go to Gonzaga Prep and take a photo with Santa with their families, and it's free.
And Prep's been doing that forever. They just invited them as part of the community.
Yep, and partnered with them to do it.
Wow.
And she does these amazing events all the time.
What's the impact, you think, at least on your kids or other kids that see those kids coming over?
I think it opens an opportunity in their mind that they never knew was possible. My daughter, and growing up, I never in a million years, I knew I would never be able to go to Gonzaga Prep. When I was leaving Shaw, half of my friends were going to Gonzaga Prep and half my friends were going to Rogers. I grew up in Hilliard. We were not one of the Gonzaga Prep kids. It just wasn't an option.
Right.
That is an option for my kids. Yeah. That's an option for my younger one. My oldest graduated, but my middle child, she is gung-ho on wanting to go to G-Prep. And
she's on campus and comfortable with it and sees the kids.
We lived at Gonzaga Family Haven for a year and a half. I mean, we just moved into a house, though.
I know. Okay, we're getting there. Yeah. So you move into Gonzaga Family Haven. There's a splash pad. Yeah. There must have been a bit of a shock transition.
Oh, yeah. You're going from communal living where we had our own rooms, but you share a living room, you share toys, you share a kitchen.
And there's scheduled stuff.
Schedules to go to the kitchen and do things. And, even for the people, because of COVID, the people who smoke cigarettes had to rotate out just to go to the balcony to smoke because you couldn't have too many people. And luckily, I actually quit smoking cigarettes when I was at Rising Strong.
That's probably worth the whole thing by itself. So you get there. Were you scared you'd go back?
No, actually I was not. For some reason, I just knew that I had worked I just spent 18 months at that treatment program and worked my butt off. No way I was going back. And what's been great,
and that program makes sure you don't go until you're ready.
Yeah, exactly. And unfortunately, I have experienced working with families that have went through that program and relapsed, but for the most part, they don't. They don't. They put so much heart and work and, so much time and effort into their recovery and into their families again and into providing the basic needs and just being there for their kids. Not just supporting them, but being there with them.
So when that was built, we filmed it that day. I wasn't there, but we filmed the grand opening, and then we went back again and to another time. And the next time I go film there, you're working there.
Yes, I am.
Okay, so how did that happen?
That was super weird. So I had been looking for a job. My husband's in college. We live at this. We had all the time. It was affordable housing.
And he was going to school where? At the Falls?
The Falls, yep.
Okay.
So he's in he was in his you know, in
And
between
this is
his
the first time
and
he'd
second
ever
year.
gone to college at all.
Oh yeah, he had
Wow.
never been to college before. And so he's still in school, doing great. He'd been on the dean's list since he started at this point. He's like doing amazing. And I'm like, well, he's in school. Kids are doing great. I want to look for a job. I want to do something.
Yeah.
So I apply at all these different places and I look at a Catholic Charities listing and I'm like, I have the qualifications to be an assistant property manager. I'd worked in offices before. I had great computer experience. So I apply for a position, and back when the film we did for the gala, I think I said I applied for the 55th position. It was somewhere on the South Hill, but I don't think it was that complex. I later found out.
Yeah.
But I applied for a different position, and
At one of the housing properties of Catholic Charities.
To be an assistant property
wasn't
manager.
Gonzaga
It
Haven.
was. That wasn't even on the listing for the jobs available. So I meet with these two beautiful women. I didn't know who they were at the time, so I meet with Sharon Budwig and Glory Houston.
Oh my God, Glory!
And I'm on
Glory's. They're both great.
I
I've
know.
gotten to meet both of them. Yeah.
So I do
Glory,
a
I can't
Zoom.
interview Glory because she cries all the time on camera, which is
Really?
why she's. Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh! I would
Which
love
is
to
why
see
she's
that.
great.
Yeah. She's like,
she's amazing. Yeah.
She's like, they're almost
And her name is
intimidating. They're so
perfect
much.
for her. And
Yeah.
they're both great. Yeah. Anyway,
They're
yeah.
so good at what they do. It's almost like
It is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just
So
crazy.
you got lucky because you got to talk with them.
Yeah. So I do this. I get called and they're like, we're gonna do the Zoom interview. So I'm trying to set up an area in my house where my kids aren't running around.
At Gonzaga Family Haven.
At Gonzaga Family Haven. So I'm sitting and I set it up in my bedroom to where you can't see I'm sitting on my bed. Like I prop it up to where it looks like
You're
just
trying
a
to be all
blank
pro.
wall. Yeah, totally. So I'm sitting in this interview and Glory goes, well, by the way, we think this is great, but we have a position available where you live. And I'm like, are you kidding? At this point, I'd
They
already
knew you
met
lived
Peggy. Oh yeah. They knew who I was. So they
Wow.
knew I came from Rising Strong. They knew I had just moved into Gonzaga
That's
Family
cool.
Haven. They knew because we had done the groundbreaking ceremony thing with Jonathan.
And
So
you
they
had
knew
been at the-
who we
Yeah,
were.
right.
Kinda. So they offered me this job and I am stoked. So they do the groundbreaking ceremony like May 31st, I think, or May 30th around there. And I start April 4th.
Oh my gosh.
And so I'm at the groundbreaking ceremony, like, nobody knows, but I'm going to start working here in 4 days. Like, I was so
So
excited.
cool.
And I knew Peggy already just from moving in there
Yeah.
and meeting her. So when you do the paperwork to move into a housing place, you do a lot of paperwork. So I had met Peggy
Yes.
many times before that, meeting with Marty and Josh, doing all the paperwork to move in. So I just loved her and I was so excited to work with her. So I started working at Gonzaga Family Haven
The
as
place
the
you
assistant
live.
property manager where I lived.
Is that a good thing? Was that like at times where you couldn't take work away because you were there?
So
Must
when
have
I
been a
first
little
started,
hard.
it was the best thing in the world. I loved it. And it still was. I mean, that was the greatest experience I could have ever had. I loved working there. I have a hard time saying no. I mean, there was many times
it's
where
part
at
of
2 in the
your,
morning, people are knocking on my door to have me unlock theirs or, just whatever it is. And
Because they knew you were there.
yeah, because they knew I was there. And I lived there before I started working there. So everybody knew I was there.
Right.
So-
But this is part of your spiritual growth, right?
Yeah.
Some boundaries you got to get.
Yeah, so I start working there, and there's a property manager there, but for a very short time, like a month. And then she leaves, and I am the assistant property manager to nobody.
Like you are the property, you're the de facto property manager.
Yeah, so I do that for about 6 months, and
So it's you and Peg, basically.
yeah, it's just me,
Wow.
Peg, and the regional manager, who is my next before Glory and Sharon.
Okay.
So my next
got
boss,
support, but-
yeah,
but
and she's actually so she
you're
oversees
kinda-
18
you're kinda
properties.
running the
but,
joint.
Yeah,
A
so
month in.
I was like nervous, learning as much as I can, and I about 4 months in, 5 or so, I ended up applying for the property manager position. Now, admittedly, I'm sure they were pretty hesitant. Like, I didn't have a property manager experience other than what I'd just been doing.
But you knew everything.
But-
you were doing it.
There was a lot I had to learn. There was a lot.
I'm sure.
So, and they were so great. I mean, and then that's when I learned after, so long who Glory and Sharon were. And I'm blowing them up every day. Like, how do I do this? And what do I do here? So then later I'm learning like, oh my gosh, they're like the big time bosses.
They oversee a lot of
yeah.
properties at
And I'm
Catholic
just
Charities.
blowing them up every day. Just
Well,
like, how do I
hey,
do this? And what do I do?
They're not saying no. They
No,
were,
they
yeah.
were so amazing. They
Yeah,
really
yeah,
taught me everything. And Michael Bradfoot was the legal assistant at that time. And I'm like blowing him up nonstop. And
Well,
so
they're happy you cared enough to call.
yeah, so they were amazing help. And so I was at Gonzaga Family Haven
As the manager.
as the property manager.
For how long?
So I started in April of 2021, and I moved to Donna Hansen Haven this last August.
Wow. So you're
So about a year and a half.
So a year and a half, and then they found a new property manager
Yeah.
at Gonzaga Family Haven, and this opportunity comes up to go to Donna Hansen Haven.
Yeah, so I get
Donna
called in by
just-
Glory to be transferred, yeah.
Okay, so Donna Hansen Haven is on Second, right next to basically where Starbucks used to be and
Yep.
closed down. It's the light blue property that
Second and State.
Second and State, right there, as you're swinging around to get on the freeway for a division.
Yeah, right in between
It's
Brown
probably
and
the
Division.
most visible
Yeah.
of all the properties that are downtown and what are called the havens. So how does this opportunity come up?
So actually, Glory, who's amazing, was like, listen, you live where you work. We want to give you a different opportunity. And so she told me about these downtown havens. It was Father Bach and Donna Hansen. So I go and meet with another manager, and he tours both properties with me. And Father Bach is the oldest downtown haven there is. And then there's Donna Hansen, who had been there about 6 years.
And they're kind of right next to each other, aren't they?
Kind of. They're about a block apart. So Jacqueline Haven's right in between them.
Okay.
So I tour both properties, and I'm like, I want to go to Donna Hansen. And they were like, great. That's kind of what we were hoping you'd pick.
Nice.
So I am excited.
When you started there when?
In August.
August of 2023. So
Yeah.
you've been there 6 months almost.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
And I love it.
Wow. So, oh man, there's so much.
And you know
this
what's crazy is
amazing.
like so they were so great. There was things that I struggled on that I didn't, maybe wasn't taught right away, or maybe just things that I didn't know to ask. So there was this week in between transferring where Glory let me come to corporate, and I got to sit with compliance and all these departments, and they were able to fill in all these blanks. So when I got to Donna Hansen Haven, the things that I was like maybe behind on at Gonzaga, maybe paperwork or just things I needed to get caught up on and that I was struggling with, I came in there just going to town.
You were prepared.
Oh, yeah. So they were behind on CERS, not behind, but like they needed to get done at that point. I am now 4 months ahead right now.
Wow.
I am like, we got so much work done there and in such a positive way. And that building looks beautiful now. We're offering things to them that I guess have never been offered before. And it's just been a crazy transition. And now what's good is I'm at a property that people don't know my story. So at Gonzaga Family Haven, everybody knew.
Right.
Half the tenants there came from Rising Strong.
Right.
So they all knew where we come from. So now...
But people do not know who you are.
So they're shocked when I'm like, hey, listen, I get it. Like, so I have people come in and they're like, I've been using, I really want to get clean. I don't know where to start. And I'm like, well, as a matter of fact, my husband works for Catholic Charities and can get you into a treatment program. And
what do they say when they hear that?
They're just like, what do you... And so I'll tell them my story kind of, just let them know, like, listen, I was a heroin addict. I came from there. And it's so nice because now I have people who will come back to me and they're like, hey, I went and did this today, or I went and got on an outpatient treatment today, or I went and applied for a job today.
They're going to tell you stuff they wouldn't have told somebody that didn't go through what you went through.
And they just,
Right.
I've had so many tenants now tell me how they feel like that they have a property manager who knows how it is.
Because you lived it.
Yeah, because I lived it.
Yeah.
So I've been there with them.
So you came into this building where we're filming right now, or at Corner Booth Media, about a year after you had been at Rising Strong.
Yep.
And you came in to be interviewed for the gala video.
And I didn't know it was for the gala.
Right.
Actually, I didn't even really know. I just was asked to come in and do an
Okay,
interview.
and so I interviewed you here about your experience. And
I had just been offered the job.
You had been at Gonzaga, you were living at Gonzaga Family
Yeah.
Haven, and you had just been offered the job there.
Yeah.
Right. So I interviewed you there. You walked in this door, and I did not know it was you. Like, look, you are a put together individual here. And what the person I saw at Rising Strong was not the person who you are now, or who walked in the door that day.
Oh, thank you. It's been a long journey, and it's been amazing. I mean, I get to experience things with my kids that I probably never could have before. And it's not, like I said, we were trying our best when we were using. But, I don't know, like, I think I cherish those moments more. It's the little things. I have a daily routine. Things that I never had when you're homeless. Even when you're living with other people. Me and my kids wake up at the same time every day and they get ready at a certain time. They brush their teeth. We eat breakfast together. I mean, we have dinner and it's amazing. And not only have we came from Rising Strong, now we're in a home. We're in a house.
Okay, so there's the next chapter of this. So just as you talk about the routines, it's security, right?
It is. And those are things that I missed so much when I was using or just homeless. And you take them for granted.
Over the little
Yeah,
stuff.
just being able to be like, you're going to take a shower or a bath on, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And we got to make sure we floss your teeth every night. And just things like, I mean, those are daily routines or things you struggle with, whether you're in addiction or not, but definitely when you're homeless.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. So you get this job at Donna Hanson Haven, and then you're still living at Catholic Charities?
Yeah, I'm still living at Gonzaga Family Haven.
Gonzaga Family Haven, I'm sorry. Catholic Charities.
So
Gonzaga
I'm still
Family
living at Gonzaga Family Haven
And Jeff is now graduated,
graduated college
and he gets a job
at Catalyst.
at Catalyst, which is a Catholic Charities property that really serves a ton of people who were essentially at Camp Hope.
Oh, yeah.
And we did a ton of work on the housing and help program that we produced with Gavin Cooley, and Spokane Low Income Housing, and the Smith Barbieri Progressive Fund to tell the story of homelessness here. And we spent a bunch of time at Camp Hope filming the people there. And so Catholic Charities gets this opportunity, a pretty big grant, $8 million or something.
Yeah.
And they gotta the idea was, can we turn an old hotel, which is up on Sunset Hill?
Yeah.
That used to be the poshest place in town, let me tell you. It did. It was the Spokane House. And I remember as a kid going to brunch there with my family at the top of the hill. I mean, this is a place where JFK had breakfast when he was on the campaign trail in the 60s in that what is now the back end, that restaurant there that they're going to turn into a whole new thing. I mean, this is a very historic place, and they get $8 million, and I want to say in 6 months, turn what was speaking of a trap house, trap hotel, into an amazing facility that we got a chance to film at recently and tour.
Oh, yeah.
That really feels like a college dorm.
I mean,
it doesn't feel sketch. It feels safe. These are people that are so grateful to be there.
Oh gosh, yeah, and the support they get from there,
and it's really pretty awesome place. I mean, 3 meals a day, the whole thing.
Oh yeah, I always forget about that.
Housing people. So Jeff gets a job there. How did that happen?
So he had actually, this is kind of weird. So while he is still in college, he has to do his practicum hours. He applies at Rising Strong. We had just graduated. I just got accepted.
It's like an internship to prove your,
So he starts just at the entry-level position. He's a family skills coach. He's the staff member that comes and hangs out in the common areas with the family. Right. So he's doing all that stuff while he's still in college. Then he starts getting to the point where he can start doing his practicum hours for the SUD position. So he's an SUDPT, a substance use disorder professional trainee. So he starts doing the intakes and things like that, and somewhere in between doing the family skills coaching and intaking and doing the SUD part of it, he is offered a position at Catalyst. He works at Catalyst now, but he still works at Rising Strong all the time. Yeah, he holds NA classes there. He helps out. I think he still does intakes there. I'm pretty sure.
So he's doing both.
Mm-hmm.
Because we saw him up there when we filmed a Catalyst.
Oh, yeah. And everybody there loves him. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
If you hear anything about Catalyst, I always hear about, oh gosh.
You guys are an incredible team. Really. How does that help each other? Do you bring your work home all the time, or does it?
Not at all.
It kind of works, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's things where once in a while he'll call me and he'll be like, "Hey, listen, I got a person who's doing great. They've been clean a long time. we have resources for them, but just with your experience, where do you think they should start out looking for housing? And then I'll give them my opinion on it.
Wow.
Now, it's not for me to help with that. It's just like, hey, I suggest maybe you start at Spokane Housing Authority, or maybe just meet with your case manager there, or whatever it is, and vice versa, where I can call his supervisor sometimes, or just, Catholic Charities stuff, and just be like, hey, I have a person who really wants to get into a treatment program. They need an assessment done.
Wow.
And so all of a sudden my husband walks through the doors of Donna Hanson Haven. He's like, I'm supposed
so
to meet
cool.
somebody here.
It just is, it's such an amazing story.
But when we're at work, you wouldn't, I mean, you know how many times I've had tenants at my building be like, I didn't know he was your husband.
Oh, there's no way.
Yeah. And
yeah,
I'm
you
like,
would never.
Yeah.
I know. And just to see you guys at that, we filmed it in the chapel out at where Rising Strong is.
Yeah.
And just to see, I mean, I'm telling you, the day you walked in here, I'm like, I did not know it was you. I was like, who's that? Oh my, that's Jerrica? No way. I mean, you both, it's just a total transformation of who you are as people. How much of that is you guys? How much of it is Catholic Charities?
I mean, if it wasn't for Catholic Charities, we wouldn't be here. I'm so grateful for everything that Catholic Charities has offered us. I mean, a lot of it we saw out, but if it wasn't for them offering, if it wasn't for me applying and them saying, heck yeah, let's put you in a position. I mean, they took a chance on me. They really did. To offer me an assistant manager position, they really did. They knew I just graduated Rising Strong. And I mean, there had been people who did great coming out, and there had been people who had relapsed. And
Right.
maybe they didn't know. I don't know. But
Right.
I knew that I was ready to go. And I love my job. I never in a million years thought I'd be a property manager. It wasn't something I was seeking out to do. It was an available position that I love what I do.
It's sort of meant for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now at Donna Hanson, there is a lot of I mean, when people think of Catholic Charities, we get to see behind the scenes there. But there's a lot of people who diss that organization. I mean, they're getting arrows thrown at them all the time. All the homeless population is their problem. You hear all the negative stuff.
Oh, yeah.
That's thrown towards the work that you all do. When it comes to Donna Hanson and the Havens, there is a perception that the people outside of those properties are in fact the people who live there.
They are not actually.
And they're not actually the people who live inside of those havens.
That is
Can
the
you explain
biggest thing that and that is probably something that I probably thought even living at Gonzaga Family Haven.
I mean, it makes sense. You drive by and you're like, look at those people.
Yeah.
They live there. Why are they outside all the
So
time?
actually, that is a huge, big miscommunication about that. The tenants that live there, if they go outside and smoke or anything, there is a courtyard between the two buildings that they go out back.
That's
so
where
the
they're
people outside are people who are, a lot of them have the opportunity to go to a shelter. A lot of them don't want to. I don't know. We do have a lot of outreach people that work inside of Donna Hanson who meet with them.
Try to see if they can actually come live there.
Yeah. And just to give them resources of anywhere to go to, or just to get into a shelter and things. But there's a lot, I would say about 99.9% of the people outside are the people who are just congregating downtown. They
are homeless.
They are homeless.
They are choosing to be there.
They are very much choosing to be there because most of the time when our resource people go out and try to assist them, there is an available shelter spot at that point.
And they're not saying yes to that.
No, they're denying. They don't want to go. So we give, they'll give them tents, they'll give them tarps, they'll give them blankets. They'll do their best to help them out. And unfortunately, that is an area that camping is not allowed. So we do our best to keep the campers off of the sidewalk with being obviously as polite and respectful to what they're going through as possible. But we do have a lot of, actually the tenants are probably more upset by what is around their building than what people assume is going, like when people drive by and they're like, oh, look at that. The tenants that live in there, that bothers them 10 times more than a person driving by.
Right. So I've had the chance to, on this podcast, and have known Dina Carr for a long time, who runs House of Charity.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. Such an incredible job she does there. And she explained it really well. She said that they are there because there's security.
Oh, yeah.
And because there's people and there's activity and there's security cameras.
Exactly.
And if anything happens to them, they are at least feel safe. So
a
lot of the reason that they're there is because there's security.
And the resources, like you're saying, there are people who come out, whether they're, it's a peer outreach team that has an office in the, one of the floors of Donna Hansen, or at Cat, which is across the street, or whatever it is. There's food, there's blankets, there's resources, and like you're saying, there's security cameras. And there has been many times where I've had non-tenants, police come in and ask me for footage of something that happened outside the building that pertains to not a single tenant of mine, because of something that happened outside the building. 99% of the time I've had to Narcan a person and give them CPR downtown has never been a tenant of mine.
Right. And so
actually every time I've never Narcaned a tenant.
Right. And so we got the chance to film there last year, and it was like, we're going to go inside these havens. What the heck are they like? Like, I don't know. I had this sense that they look new on the outside, but on the inside, they're like a prison.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you
Dark
probably felt the same way,
and,
right?
yeah.
Very dark and gloomy and strange and smells bad and all that stuff. Not the case. I mean, we went in there, and it's, obviously people are, a variety of people live there.
Oh, yeah.
They have come through a lot. But I found the place to be really like an apartment building. I mean, fairly normal, not a whole lot going on. A lot of activities, a lot of food available, people congregating. There's a community there.
Oh, yeah.
Am I right about that?
Oh, definitely. So we have an amazing team of integrated case managers. So we offer wraparound services there too. So we have people when, if I have paperwork to do, I find a case manager and I'm like, hey, this person needs to go to the Social Security office to get their benefit letter. They'll go help them go get that. If they need a doctor's appointment to be made, there's a healthcare coordinator to help them do those things.
Right.
And if something happens, a person gets sick, then you have their neighbor coming down to pick up their lunch for them, because every week the ICM team makes lunch every Thursday. So if their neighbor is sick, you have one of the other guys coming down and they're like, hey, so-and-so's sick. I'm going to come bring their plate up to him. They very much care about each other. It's a very knit group that they're really there for each other.
Have you found that your story is inspiring to them? That they're like, she did this. Do they know?
Yeah.
So
some of them do. I don't go out with a sign on. Hey, I was a heroin addict once.
Woohoo!
Yeah. So, but there are people who come in who have maybe discussed things with me that I have told them about it. And it's really great because those are the people that come back that tell me about their successes and the things they've done. And and they'll even ask me, do you mind if I tell, so-and-so this? They're really struggling. And I'm like, absolutely not. That's no problem to me. And granted, they know I'm there as the property manager. I'm there to make sure that their work orders get done, their paperwork gets done. I'm there to upkeep the property, get the rent paid, things like that. But I'm also there to be there for them if they need something. And I may not be able to have all the resources, but I can sure direct you where they go to get them.
What do you love about it?
Everything. I don't know. I love my job. I love being able to see people come from, whether it's addiction or just homelessness, and then
have a chance.
Being able to give them their keys to their first apartment that they've had in many years, and be there with them when they got through these steps, and then when they're ready to move on to a house or whatever it is, and to be able to be there with them looking for these new houses. Because the program we have at Donna Hansen, which is at a lot of them, is called a project-based voucher program. After 1 year, they can qualify for a Section 8 voucher to take anywhere in the country with them. And they can move into a house. They can move into a duplex. They can move anywhere they want, because the voucher goes from being attached to the apartment to then being attached to the tenant. And
That's
the tenant
cool.
can go anywhere.
That's what a Section 8 voucher is.
Yeah. So the different, and there is qualifications. They have to be there for a year. They have to be compliant. The rent has to be paid.
They got to do it right. They got to do right for a while, and they
Exactly. And then they get something that a lot of people wait for many years to get. I've heard of people be like, oh, I was on the Section 8 wait list for 6 years.
Wow.
This bypasses that list because they cooperated. They did everything they were supposed to for that year. So it is amazing to see people who come from homelessness
and that happened to you.
Yeah.
So you got
a new house.
What? When did this happen?
So we moved in October. This year, October. Yep. And it was pretty quick, actually. I got a phone call from Jonathan Mallahan, and they had just recently bought a couple of houses. He needed a property manager for them, and Catholic Charities does buy houses and they'll rent them to employees. I can think of probably 6 employees who have either have rented a Catholic Charities house.
That's right. That's cool.
So it's not, it's not just me they rented it to by any means.
Right.
But I was just so grateful for the opportunity because we were able to get out of that. It's nice because we're able to get out of the apartment and into a home. And I don't know if he was aware of this at the time, but we were looking into starting to want to buy a house soon. So I think being able to move into this house, even though we're not buying it, means that we don't have to rush into buying a house that maybe we wouldn't want by just wanting to get out of the apartment.
You can get the right one.
Yeah.
And
we can take our time.
And the rental history is huge.
Oh, yeah.
Like having that as an ability to possibly get a mortgage.
Exactly.
They're all connected.
And we have spent this whole time that since we've been clean, we have done, learning about credit was nothing I grew up with. My parents were not, my dad was a welder his whole life. I grew up with parents that were in addiction. My brother was in addiction. Like that, I didn't have that growing up. I didn't know anybody that owned a house. And I never knew a person that owned a house till I was a human adult. I never seen anything like that. I didn't know anybody that went to college when I was growing up. Wow. Like, it wasn't something that I was ever around.
It's not the world that you were connected to.
No. My brother always said we grew up genetically predisposed.
Well, yeah. Is that part of the problem?
No, I don't think so. I really was against drugs for so long. I can honestly say I had never even tried a drug until I was almost 30 years old. Huh. Like, I was so against them, and I don't know if it was just being beat down mentally for so long and trying so hard. Yeah. And there were so many years that people accused me of doing it just because we were struggling, and I would be so offended and so mad because I would never do that. I grew up with that. I had my brother who went to prison. My dad died of it. My mom struggled with it. And it's amazing because I am now proud to say that my mom is now in recovery.
No way. How cool.
I never thought, I'm so proud of her.
Wow.
And the mom that I was so upset because, she was the one who was still using at the time I left is now clean.
Wow. This is incredible.
And I don't know. I know. And now we're able to now she babysits for my children and is a big part of their lives.
So this has really changed sort of the trajectory of your family. So how are your kids now?
Oh my gosh, they're amazing. My son just graduated high school. He just turned 18 the day before his graduation day. So he turned 18 June 9th, graduated June 10th. He was at On Track Academy. Yep. He was part of yearbook. He was in the leadership team. He did all these extracurriculars. He's waiting 1 year. He wants to go apply at Evergreen University.
Oh, Evergreen's cool. Yeah.
So Piper was born in Olympia, so he knows all about Evergreen. Okay. And so Piper is so great. So she's in third grade right now, and she is perfect attendance. She is in every extracurricular you could think of. She has done basketball. She's in Lexia Core Club. She's in STEM. She's in STEAM Ahead.
You're busy.
Oh, yeah.
You guys are busy.
My baby, he unfortunately has some surgeries coming up. He was born with one of his eardrums sucked inside the ear canal, and the other ear is fully sealed shut with water underneath it. So he's nonverbal. He now has been in physical therapy, speech therapy, and occupational therapy the last 2 years. He actually goes to pre-K at Logan Elementary, and he has a surgery on February 2nd, and he has just started speaking, finally.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, congratulations. Wow. What a long, crazy journey.
Oh, I know.
It's amazing to see all this stuff. So when you hear people that are just ready to quit, what do you tell them?
Don't. It's so worth it. It's not... Drugs aren't worth it. That life is awful, and anybody can do it. You just gotta want to do it, though. You can't be forced into it. Anybody that's forced into starting to get clean will not succeed. But if you're ready to do it, there are resources out there. There are people out there, and there is so many support systems out there. You just gotta know where to look.
So, you see this whole the challenge of homelessness. I've spent a ton of time on it the last 3 years just in terms of telling that story. What is it? Do you have hope because you've kind of come through it yourselves? What do you think needs to happen?
It's a big question. For homelessness, the thing is, though, I've noticed with homelessness is that there's two different groups of people that are looking, for housing. There's these people that will do anything. They're doing great. They're trying their hardest, and they're just like not getting up there. And I've seen people who are like, well, I never was an addict, so my SPDAT scores aren't too high. I never had domestic violence. I'm just financially struggling. So they don't have as many opportunities, but they're still struggling. So they're just down on this list where they don't get these opportunities. And then you have these people that
So there are
have
people
all
that
these
are actually doing it right that don't have opportunities
because they didn't struggle
because they
too
didn't
much.
struggle enough.
Yeah, they didn't make a bunch of mistakes in life, so they didn't get these different ones. And that was at the time, that was where we were at. So before we were addicts, there was nothing, no resources for us before when we were struggling all those years. Yeah, because we weren't addicts. We weren't,
and it essentially led to
being
addiction.
Addicts. Yeah.
What would you do if you had your magic wand and you could wave it around that? Give more people opportunities that are on the edge?
I would think so. I mean,
That just seems
give
crazy.
people hope to know that they can do it. I think a lot of people stay in that addiction because they're complacent. They know it. They know that life, and they don't know what's on the other side of it. They don't know what's out there for them.
Even if it's horrible, it's what they know.
They have friends. They have, what they think is friends. They have people, and there are people that I still talk to that I knew in my addiction who are doing great now, or who still, they may have gotten clean after me and I didn't talk to them for a while, but they're like, hey, we did it finally. And it's so great. But I think a lot of people stay down that road because they don't know. They think it's going to be so hard, and it's not. We worked hard. But you
were focused.
Yeah, but our life is not harder now than it was when we were using and homeless.
Way better.
Yeah.
And the pride you must have.
Exactly. And the work we're doing is prideful work. It's something that we can
matters.
You're
making a huge difference for other people. You're kind of spreading that ripple, right? Yeah. That's pretty cool. What are you most grateful for?
Everything that I have with my family. Everything. I'm grateful for tomorrow. I am grateful to be able to see my kids every morning and take them to school. I am grateful to be able to have dinner at my table with my husband and my kids. It's a rare thing for a couple to not only go through addiction together, but to come out of it together. Most couples, they either meet in addiction, or me and Jeff were clean for many, many years, never even thought of using drugs, went through addiction together and got clean together. So I'm so grateful to have my husband next to me through all this. And my kids, and to be able to say that we did it, and to be able to know that even if my dad isn't here or whatever, that I can make somebody proud.
Do you realize the impact you're having?
No. To me, I'm just a property manager that quit doing heroin. Yeah,
well, it's probably way more than that. You probably are making a bigger difference than you kind of realize. Just the people that are around you and seeing what you're doing. And you're incredibly inspiring to me. It's
if
awesome.
We could help anybody, that'd be amazing.
I'm going to ask one more question just about the havens down. What do you say to people who say Catholic Charities is building slums downtown? They should not be there. The havens, of which there are 5 or something downtown, they're only making the problem worse.
I would say that they're probably misinformed. They're probably taking information that they're hearing just from this person that said it and this person that said it from what they're seeing when they're driving by, and they need to be able to look a little deeper into it, because there's amazing people inside those havens. There's people who have struggled through a lot. There's people that have overcame things that I couldn't imagine overcoming, and they're amazing people that live in these havens that deserve the same opportunity as everybody else, and everybody deserves a home.
That's for sure. and that's a challenge now in the country we live in, and in this city. It's a lot. It's tough.
And it makes me proud to work for a company like Catholic Charities, who is working so hard to, combat homelessness, to be able to provide opportunities to people that would never otherwise be able to get them.
Well, and as Rob McCann always says, sort of stop the chain of intergenerational poverty, right? And that's something that you kind of are doing.
Yeah.
You're
I mean, and
changing
that's the
that.
big point of Gonzaga Family Haven. Being able to provide a family with an opportunity to go to Gonzaga Prep that otherwise maybe grew up in a lifestyle that I grew up in. Like, that's something that I can now offer my daughter when she gets old enough. That is a complete change in intergenerational poverty. I mean, my dad grew up poor. We grew up poor. Like, my daughter, I mean, we're not rich by any means, but I can offer her opportunities that I was never offered.
Yeah.
And
You weren't even aware of.
yeah, I wasn't even aware it was something we could even try to do.
Right. It had nothing to do with your ability.
Actually, I didn't even know that you could get scholarships places like that, and I had amazing grades in school.
See, right. That just, yeah. Wow. That's incredible. How can people help? What do you need?
Gosh.
Everything?
Everything. I mean, honestly, donations are always great. I mean, even at the havens, I mean, there's days where, these people that live here are on fixed incomes. You know what I mean? They go there, they get their rent paid, their phone, and then they're still struggling to get toilet paper and shampoo and conditioner. And I mean,
It's tight.
I know that donating can help so much because we're able to. Rob has worked so hard and put up so many housing complexes, and he has housed so many individuals and families. And the work that Rob and Jonathan and everybody does, Glory and Sharon, is amazing.
No.
Yeah, and it's just it makes me proud to say that I work with people like that, because I mean, that's really donating and being able to offer something to people that would not otherwise have it.
Well, the other thing I always think about whenever I'm telling a story about Catholic Charities is, imagine if it wasn't there.
Yeah.
I mean, the impact would be
It would be
enormous.
astronomical. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think people have any clue
Oh, yeah.
at how much that organization holds.
Well, because they're not just housing people, they offer things that I don't think anybody on the outside knows. The wraparound services, the offering counseling and just, a hand to go with you to a doctor's appointment. I mean, if your family needs a counselor, you have a case manager who will find you one and help you walk through that. If you, I mean, anything. So they offer wraparound services at every haven. It's not just the families. We have wraparound services at Donna Hanson Haven.
And that's kind of the key, I think, to this whole thing
it's a
working.
huge key to it.
Housing is big because it gives you stability, and it lets you, like you said, those 2 weeks of just, I could just be stable.
Yeah.
Right? It's huge. But you have to have the other services or it doesn't stick.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't know what the stats are, but the people that come through Gonzaga Family Haven and come through that there especially, they end up staying housed.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't go back.
No.
and I think that's the piece that I think people aren't quite aware of. And I
Well,
hope
yeah.
that becomes a model, especially Gonzaga Family Haven, becomes a model for all around the country. But it needs those specific things, right? It needs
Yeah.
a college, and it needs a high school, and it needs a community to do it.
To be able to offer those things. I mean, Peggy had a class there not too long ago where they offered this entry. It was this job training opportunity for women. And the first one was for just women, but it offered them a guaranteed internship if they completed this course. And it was an opportunity that people haven't had. We brought SkillsKin to there. We brought SkillsKin to Donna Hanson Haven, and we are offering jobs to people with disabilities so they can keep their benefits and work as many hours as possible so that they can get their essential needs. But they're not just doing that. They're giving them jobs that cater to what their disability is. If you can't work around people, if you can't stand long periods of time, there's assembly jobs. If you want to do, if you're a very organized, tidy person and that's what you want to do, you're hyper-focused, you can do cleaning, you can do janitorial. And they make sure that you're not going to lose your benefits or your housing.
Right. So that was the last, what made me invite you here was because we just filmed again on a program that we're super proud of at Corner Booth, because we had helped create, along with Andy Robert, who does an amazing job at Catholic Charities, a video last year that the SkillsKin partnership, which is a local company here that, like you said, provides, housing for or jobs for people with disabilities, teamed up with Catholic Charities here of Eastern Washington and did a pilot program.
Yep.
And that was on display at basically a competition with 10 other Catholic charities around the country, of which there are 300 or so, or over 200 Catholic charities around the country in huge cities. And the top 10 kind of cool programs got highlighted at a big event last year in Cleveland. We did a video for it, and the video played as part of the pitch that Spokane's Catholic Charities Eastern Washington and Skillskin made to Catholic Charities for a grant of $633,000.
Yeah.
And the top prize, and you guys won it.
So what's amazing about that is I was part of the pilot program. We piloted it at Gonzaga Family Haven, and we
filmed it that day there. I know,
and it was kind
that's
of
the
a
video
weird,
that we pushed out at the event.
So and that's where it was a pilot thing. And so in my mind, as the property manager, I'm like, well, this is a small demographic. We do have people with disabilities. We don't have a lot, but we have some.
But yet people want jobs.
Exactly. But then even after that was done, I just kept thinking like, why don't we do this downtown? And then I got transferred downtown. And I'm like looking at my demographics and stuff.
A lot more disabilities there.
And I had so many tenants prior to that coming to me going, gosh, I really wish I could. I'm having a hard time finding like these Craigslist jobs and stuff. And I don't know if I claim them. I don't want to lose my benefits.
So that's the other problem where the system doesn't work. And things need to be, I mean, one of the many places that I'm learning about the problem with the system not working is that if you're on disability and you live in a haven, for instance, or you live in subsidized housing or you live in affordable housing, you are discouraged from getting a job.
I mean,
am I right about that? Because
I wouldn't quite say that, but there is a cap.
There's a cap, and if you earn too much,
yes,
you can lose your benefits.
You could lose your benefits, your cash benefits, and you could potentially lose your housing.
Right. So we are incentivizing people to not work.
I mean, there is for the individuals and for the cap is based off of how many people are in your household and certain things like that. So an individual who is getting just Social Security, they're going to have quite a bit of room to make some money before they're going to lose their housing because Social Security is way below the poverty level. There's going to be a big...
But it changes a lot, and these guys don't know.
And then their rent goes up.
And they hear the rumor, don't work.
Yep.
Because I'm at risk of losing my housing.
And all
my cash and disability that I get.
Yep.
So it is better for me just to stay safe. Mm-hmm. And the last thing the last thing that people have that are in that situation is a lot of trust.
Oh yeah.
So, right? And so
in their mind, if they start working, say part time, and they make this money, they're gonna make less than what they're getting from the state. If they lose their benefits, they're gonna make less than that by working their butts off every day, where they could just not do anything, get a little bit more every month.
Right.
But then they're like, well, where can we get this extra little bit? Where can I just get enough to get my essential needs met?
Exactly. So this program, Skillskin and Catholic Charities together, is finding a way where they help those individuals go, we're going to make sure that you don't overdo your hours.
And that's where a property manager comes in.
You get work and you get pride and you build a resume.
Yep.
Right? And you also can earn extra money and not lose your benefits.
And it's they're hiring. So it's not a third-party agency. It's their company they're hiring for. So it's their
You're
jobs.
working for Skillskin.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you're going to be safe because they monitor, and it's just a brilliant idea. It's just a brilliant idea that then gives people a chance to work again, right? Because, I mean, that's one of the challenges.
They help them get a hold of Social Security to be like, how much can this person make before they're at risk of losing their benefits?
There must be so many people that are even currently standing outside of your havens who qualify for things they had no idea they qualify.
Oh yeah. And I think there is a fear in it with it. I think that we did the event at Donna Hansen, and a lot of people were so interested in it, but they were so scared. Is this real? Is this really going to happen?
Am I going to get hosed?
Am I going to start working and lose everything? So I really think that it's going to take a person doing it and succeeding for it to start catching on. I think there's a lot of people who came to me after the event going, I really want to do this, but I am terrified. Wow. Losing everything.
Wow.
And I mean, they're like, well, I've never done it. I worked with them. I've met with them. I actually was part of the pilot program. I know somebody who went through it. And so then they're interested.
It's going to take a couple of victories and those people to come back and share like you did.
Yep.
Right. And be brave enough. I mean, that's the biggest thing I think you should be super proud of, you and Jeff both, is the fact that you shared your story.
Of course. If it helps even one person.
You didn't have to do that.
Yeah. And
you did. You stuck your neck out and went. And you were vulnerable.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been vulnerable the whole time. And that's, and the impact it's having is just I'm just proud of you guys.
Oh, thank
It's just cool to see success come your way, and you deserve it.
It's just so weird to me that we just kept meeting just
I know,
by
there's
chance
no accidental
over the
meetings. Like we'll see where this leads.
Yeah, I
goes
know,
from
right?
here. Well, thank you for being,
course.
taking the time to share this story, because I think it's remarkable, and it gives a lot of people hope. So, bravo.
Oh,
well done. MIP Podcast was filmed at the studio of Corner Booth Media. Please sure to like, subscribe, and follow us on social media. You can also listen to us on Spotify, Apple Music, and anywhere podcasts can be found.
We'd love it if you'd rate, review, and subscribe to help our podcast grow. Be good to yourself. Stay interesting.